Thank you. And welcome to everybody just in Estonia. So that I hope that virtually you are now in Estonia, even if you feel a bit different weather from in Egypt, for example. So that the weather is quite different. So, but first, when to follow the title of the discussion we have today, then I have to say that I am a father of two kids. One of them is 14 and another one 16-year-old, so that they are already quite old and independent to cope with online learning challenges. And this is what I have discovered during the last year, or even more than a year already. So in addition, I have to say that they have had relevant experience for online learning already before the lockdown in March 2020, because in their school, at that time, they were in the same school. They had that kind of practice that every month they had 1 day of online learning. So that already before, and it was for them much easier to move to the new situation where so much had to be online. Of course, the diversity of the teachers was very much different, and the diversity of parents remains different for a long time, because teaching and learning process of the kids is always a collaboration of parents and teachers in this process. They have different roles, but they all have their own role to play in this process. What I discovered, and many others also discovered in the beginning of the lockdown period in March 2020, we saw that often the teachers struggled with the new situation and hoped that it will go away quite soon, so that maybe we can just, let's say, play some games that are not related to their learning goals so much during that time. And then later we can make what is needed, so that we can make faster later in order to cope with the gaps in the learning process, so that they didn't believe that we start to learn how you learn and teach in the lockdown period. But of course, in the autumn 2020, it was clear that it will not change so fast, and that maybe that kind of situation has here forever. So that maybe this time we have COVID-19, we will win the virus maybe in a year or so, but then maybe something else comes out, another virus, and then we have to learn how to flexibly cope with that kind of situations. And but indeed, what is difficult is that sometimes what I also hear even today, more than a year later, is that teachers have tried to transfer the methods of learning and teaching into the new situation without understanding the difference of the learning process. And that is the source of the failure often. And so that we see that in the research on educational technology, we still have significant gaps for supporting that kind of transfer. So that this is the challenge for the educational researchers, how to support transfer of learning process from one situation to other one, and maybe even to make it flexibly very quickly. Some issues what I have seen in this time is that for example, last year in spring 2020, my daughter finished the basic school in Estonia at 9th grade, and then she had to enter to a gymnasium. And in Estonia, it's often so that you have some tests in order to compete with others to get the best school, let's say in this way. And of course, my daughter also wanted to enter the best school and many others, and those schools provide tests. But what was difficult, they didn't know how to organize it in a way that actually is, let's say, trustful, so that the kids cannot cheat, so that the kids are doing the tests by themselves, and how to make comparable those results. And they used a kind of online medium for testing. The kids had to identify themselves with their identity card, showing it to the camera, but later we didn't know who was sitting there to make the test. It was done, and so it went. What turned out to be a big issue was that many students learned how to use internet-based tools to make their tests. I would say that it was a sign of excellent digital competency. But actually, the ones who tested the kids were not so happy about this. For example, many kids already knew and shared this information among the group of other students, that kind of tools that help you to solve mathematical problems. In Finland, they had that kind of tool that you like trigonometric tasks, quite difficult ones actually, so that you can just scan the task, and then this will provide you the whole process, not only the outcome, the final result, but all the process that then needs to be written down in this online environment. But what was interesting and how it became a discussion was that in this system, because it was developed in Finland, they had learned different procedure to solve this type of problem than it has been usually taught in Estonian schools. Nobody says that the other one, the different procedure, is better or worse, but it was different. And for that, actually, the ones who were assessing, reviewing the results found that the kids have cheated. And so that became an interesting issue. So that how to run online testing, and even more, what is the goal of testing? Why do we test kids? And this is a discussion that is still here again this spring, and there is no good or even, let's say, right answer to this this discussion. So the second topic that I saw is responsibility. Responsibility of children and teachers and parents. Let's say how to share this responsibility between different stakeholders, if we may call them in this way as well. And sometimes we saw that the teachers were very good and clear, saying that responsibility of teaching is still my responsibility. In some other cases, we saw that teachers felt that we have to give this responsibility of teaching to parents, or at least the parents took this responsibility because they understood that otherwise there will be some gaps in knowledge and skills of their kids, and they are not so competitive anymore in final tests, for example. And so sometimes voluntarily, sometimes by force, the parents took the responsibility of teachers. And this was one of my first messages when I gave some presentations last spring, that this is not the way to go. The parents have their own responsibilities. The parents usually are not workless. They have their own duties at their work. And in order to cope with them and to be good at their work, they need to have time for that. So that parents cannot take, and even more, they don't have to take the role of the teacher because they are not learned this. They do not know the best methods in pedagogy, and they might do something bad even sometimes with putting too much pressure on their kids and that kind of thing. So that and the methods they choose might be not the best ones, and then they might be in contradiction with the ones used by the teachers, and it might be a lot of mess there. That's why the responsibility should be as it was before the COVID times, let's say, according to my understanding, so that the teachers have the responsibility of teaching and guiding the learners, but the other stakeholders also need to have the responsibility. What we saw and what was actually very well taken by the kids often is that the responsibility of children, the kids, is much more important in the learning process. And I have seen a lot that during the last year, the kids have understood that they have very important responsibility in their learning process. Of course, it depends on the kids and so on, but the things have been improved. That is good. And then sometimes I have also seen that the parents have better understood what is their responsibility. And this is to create a supportive environment. In school, teachers and all school staff is responsible in this. At home, it's the responsibility of the kids. And it's not only the material or technical environment, let's say, but even more the cultural environment. The positive learning culture, and also sometimes supporting kids in building their schedule for the learning day or learning week. Sometimes the teachers left more responsibility on the kids to build up their schedule of the week. Sometimes and in case of my kids, it is more so that they have their lessons, online lessons in video learning environments, and they have less flexibility. But indeed, some classes like physical education is something that they could do on their own, and they then just have to make some reports on that, and they can also engage the parents in that kind of activities. That is also some fun. But this brings me to the framework of agency, what I believe could help here. It has been often understood as professional agency, but more and more we are talking about agency that is relevant for kids as well. So that we are following in our studies ecological model of agency, which actually defines 3 dimensions. That we have the past, our competencies from the past, we have experienced something. We have the future, our goals, and we have the present, our current situation with all the material, cultural, structural conditions. And in this framework, we have seen that teachers and parents could help kids to set their goals and build the environment, the present, what is here, so that we do not put too much pressure, so that we help the kids to understand, to also to celebrate their success stories and so on, so that we have to focus on the progress, on the process, and the progress in the process, and the commitment of the kids, and so on, so that this is really something good. And another discussion in this regard has been about the diversity of different tools, both technical and also methodological tools used in the learning process. And in school, maybe these have been more similar in the past than in case of the e-school in nowadays. And this is something that have also supported teachers' collaboration. But we also saw that in the beginning last year, it was so that often that the teachers started to use different learning environments, and it was somehow confusing for the kids. And then they started to find solutions, and finally found that that we need to communicate more with other teachers in order to come out with similar solutions that will help the learning process, to support the learning process more in coherence. And this actually was a positive result, because we saw that there will be more shared responsibility, more shared goals, more collective agency, which is also now a hot topic. So that now we see that teachers have already discussed more general and long-term goals, what is also interesting for me. And our studies actually show that during the COVID times, it has changed, so that when in the beginning and even before the COVID times, we saw that the most important goal in schools was related to qualification. So that different subject-specific skills, knowledge, and less related to personal skills, social-emotional skills, subjectivization and socialization. Then now we see that teachers value much more and focus much more on that kind of general long-term goals, like subjectivization and socialization, how to become more aware about yourself, how to become more aware about your other peer students, how to support each other, and that kind of things. So that this is really something positive what I have seen in this times, and what I would like to highlight to make it even more visible for different kids and parents all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margus. Yeah, the stage, you can say.
No, I just wanted to highlight what you have just said, that we as parents and society basically are responsible for setting an example for kids. They have to see somebody doing that to start doing that themselves. They should see the role models who are self-organizing, who are in a continuous learning process that will change the mood for the whole story and will make it easier.
Right. Thank you, Margus, for your talk. You opened many. I don't know what to say. Eye-opening, maybe topics from the testing. For example, this is the most interesting thing to me, why we are testing the students, because we had in Egypt a different experience last year. They canceled the exam totally, and they asked the students to do research and submit research work. So the parents all of a sudden and the students found themselves that they are doing something really new. And then the corruption always have a way. So what they did is, as you said, in the online testing for the Estonian and Finnish students, but what they did here is some offices did this research work, or some teachers did this research work, and just the parents bought this work and submitted it to the school, or some parents did this work and submitted this work to the school. So sometimes we can say that testing is a way just to know who studied, who learned what, to evaluate those sort of skills. Some people will argue this hardly, and some people will say, okay, what is the point of testing? Now we are serving a standardized education. So we are setting certain standards to evaluate the students. So I think that this is a very complicated issue that should be discussed from different angles. And the other issue is related to self-regulation and being an autonomous learner. This is, for example, something that I don't have answer to from my experience with the children that I taught, or the children with my daughter, or with the other kids that I see, that who is responsible to teach students to be autonomous? Is it the responsibility of parents to teach them to be autonomous? Or is it the responsibility of the school to teach them to be autonomous? For example, in the French system where my daughter is enrolled, they say, since day one when I submitted her to the school, that they are going to build this sort of autonomy skills inside the students. And I never saw a single action for this, really. So I don't know till now. I really ask them each year, what are you doing to build self-regulation skills inside the students, or to make them autonomous learners? Because this is a question. If we are asking students to be autonomous and and independent to learn, we then need to have built some sort of skills with them, or to do something like that. I had students in the robotics, when I told them, they came to me with zero autonomous skills, with zero desire for being responsible. And I saw that this took years to transfer them, like 3 or 4 years, until they became very responsible, autonomous, self-regulated, and they started to coach others. But it took years to build those sort of skills. So yeah. So Margus, you raised your hand. You want to answer, and then Tetia raised her hand too.
Yes. Very shortly, I wanted to respond to that regarding autonomy and self-regulated learning. I believe that in that kind of cases, we need to be more specific in order to make some changes, so that we need to define what we mean by autonomy and where we could see the autonomy could be supported. And the same with self-regulated learning skills, so that those constructs are too broad to affect everything at the same time. But by small pieces, we can make the change throughout the years. I believe that it should be shared responsibility of teachers and parents, but in order to do this, we need to collaborate with each other. We need to define what is autonomy for us, and how do we, let's say, move towards higher autonomy from year to year. For example, what kind of activities could we do in school, and what at home, and so on. And in case of self-regulated learning, we need to think that it consists of, let's say, 3 phases: preparation phase, the learning phase, and the appraisal phase. And in each of those phases, we need to do something. We can look at 4 different areas of self-regulation: cognition, metacognition, very difficult words, okay, motivation, and emotions. So that, and if we break those larger constructs into smaller pieces, then we can think, how do we have awareness about our emotions, for example, and we have to start recognizing our emotions daily basis. And then we can start thinking, aha, if I have that kind of emotion, then what should I do? Maybe it doesn't work for others, but for me it does work, and so on, and we have to operationalize those difficult and complex constructs in order to be successful.
I hope that I think that what I like between what you said and Mecca, and what we're going to see with Varvara and Stephen, is that there is a variety of culture there. Perhaps in Estonia, as you said, things were more prepared because, for example, at your children's school, they already were using this one day. So they prepared them somehow to this. And I think that was a very good step. I wish that many schools did it. But what is really funny, that even when many systems returned back to in 2021, before the other peak, the second wave, they didn't take this chance to prepare the students for the state of emergency if they lock down again. And I saw that with the French system. because the Ministry of Education in France started to train the teacher in January 2021. So my reply was, you are too late. Why you didn't do this since September, for example, till December, before this wave, the second wave? Why you didn't prepare the students inside the classroom for being that they might return back to the online classes? And the answer I got was, we got surprised. We didn't thought that we are going to have another wave, although the whole world was talking that we are going to have a second wave and we might face lockdown. But they insisted that there would be a solution, and this solution would be having the students in a traditional way inside inside the schools, and nothing really changed. So yeah, I think it needs a lot of work to have this change. Tetia raised her hand. She has a question. Mecca has a comment or question. So
I have a comment a bit about what Margus said about supporting children's self-regulation and autonomy. Maybe I'm naive, but this is what I think, that we have to unteach and unparent a bit to support that, instead of putting even more things, thoughts, and activities to support it. I think that children learn to be autonomous and self-confident when they are not so parented and schooled. That's just my opinion.
thank you, Tetia. Mecca?
I have a sort of a similar comment, and also based on my experience. We have a case here. Again, I'm referring to my son's school because it has become a case study for me to even start a very large-scale study on the experiences of emergency situation. In our school, parents are involved, like they're engaged. It's a school where we are part of the process, part of the deal. I don't have so much time for this because my son's father works abroad, so I need to do many things together. So in a way, I didn't have much time to be a helicopter mother. And what I see is that this is full of helicopter mothers, and sometimes we had a problem of mothers in getting involved a lot in the process of teaching and learning of the kids. Right now, mothers became like me, and they had so many things to do. They were requesting from teachers, just please give us a frame, because everything was in a chaos. Just give our kids a sort of a structure. When do they have to deliver? What they have to deliver? Because also in our school, we didn't have homeworks. We had only very, very little things to do during the weekend. So kids were not used to this at all. So they sort of didn't have responsibilities. So what I see right now, and it's not only my experience, but the whole class, is that kids learn how to be autonomous. Kids learn how to self-regulate and use tools for it, technologies. The Google Classroom, for instance, my son, when he understood that he had to regulate breaks between the synchronous teaching sessions, he used Alexa. I didn't suggest him. He called Alexa, set time for 15 minutes so that Alexa could remind him. Or also he used... Starting now. Sorry. So he sort of use different technological tools to help him self-regulate. So I see a potential for self-regulation in technology. And also I see a change in my own kid. Now he's much more autonomous. And if I have to pinpoint to one thing he learned during this pandemic, I'm not worried about him anymore. I'm not worried if he didn't learn arithmetic so well or something, but he did learn how to learn. So for me, it was a very precious experience. Now I can, of course, I check him sometimes, but I deliberately do not interfere much because I think what we can do, so to summarize, what we need to do to support kids is to give them the possibility to do stuff themselves, regulate, of course, some kind of, but give them more autonomy. Teachers need to give them more autonomy, more responsibility for their teaching and learning processes. They have to become a part of it. And also the parents. Helicopter parenting doesn't work, I think.